All right, let's talk about how the four-year U works with relationships, or how you can use it to better understand relationships. And what this is the seasonal quadrant. So you have winter, spring, summer, and fall. And we'll use this to create a structure for having conversations about how these things work. But I want to tie two concepts together. One is the question, or asking, and creative, what's the word? Participation, creative participation. All right, so real quick on the question. So you have the question and the answer. So here's the question, here's the answer. And at each stage, when you go from winter, spring, summer, you'll notice that you'll go through these. You'll have a question, you'll have an answer. And that is the gate that you go through. So I know this is all esoteric so far, but I'm going to bring it down to earth here a second. Okay. So what winter is, so it's also it's also cyclical, right? It's not only cyclical, but it's also it's fractal. So like I'm going to draw a smaller quadrant up here, and it'll represent the macro, and this will be the micro. Okay. So this is also winter, spring, summer, fall, right? You know, it's not a question, but you know, move this question down. In this quadrant, I want you to think of this entire quadrant as this. Okay, so we'll call this the dating app. All right, so let's imagine this is the dating app. When you first connect with someone, that is, do you want to connect? Yes, I want to connect. You've entered winter. You've connected or matched. Nothing's really happening, but it has started, right? Okay. So then you ask, someone at some point starts the conversation. If it moves forward, someone starts a conversation. So in the spring, someone starts a conversation, which is the question. And then if there's an answer, it begins the spring. So this is the opener, or the opening conversation. And this is where we start to move from the question into the creative participation. What I want you to imagine is, imagine there's two people. Yeah, there's two people in a relationship. At least two people. Okay. Imagine these are like two people on a game board. Okay, they're not on the game board yet. This person does the match. This person does the match. Now they're both in winter. This person does the opener. This person responds. Now they're both in spring. All right, so these, it's creative participation. And what I mean, why you're creating a relationship through participation. And one person or the other person is always leading, the other person's always following. One person's asking, one person's responding. Why I'm emphasizing participation is that if you're on this game board and you get here and you move here, but the other person doesn't, but then you move here, or if you go here and you try to jump here, like it's not natural. Remember, this is winter, spring, summer, fall. These are natural rhythms, and these repeat. So if you try to go against nature, you're more likely to have problems. So the natural cadence is, let's start with an opener, then we'll have a good conversation, lead to a date, and that's the end of that cycle, and that's the app. Which I'll write this out, but the next phase is the actual first date. Okay, so this is the heat of the conversation, and then this is the ask for the date. So if you make it past the opener, you get into a conversation, then you ask for a date. And that completes the first cycle on the app. Then you move to the date. So then this resets. It's still fall, summer, spring, winter. But when you first show up at the date, you're back at winter again. So you've agreed to the date, okay? Now do you show up? Do you show up? Do they show up? That's winter. Then it's opening conversations. Then it's deep conversations. Then it's next actions, whatever those are. And if you've been on a date, you know this game, right? You show up, they show up. Everything's cold, right? You got to warm it up with opening conversations. You start something, they talk. If they don't warm up, you probably don't move into deep conversations. Maybe you just say, hey, this isn't working out, I'm going to bounce, right? But if it does work out, deep conversations, then you say, you know what? At some point, someone's like, do we want to do this again? Or do we want to go for a walk after this? Or do we want to continue the date? Do we want to continue the relationship? You know, it's not a full-blown relationship at that point, but you're starting a relationship, right? It has to go through the cycles. If you jump too far ahead, if you jump straight from the app to marriage, it's likely not going to work, right? So let's just keep doing this, right? The next one is relationship. And then over here, well, go ahead and just put in marriage. So the macro is here, app, date, relationship, marriage. What does that look like within this, the micro for relationship? You go from, at some point, someone has to say, hey, ask the question, we've been dating, do we want to exclusively date? So this is exclusively date. Wow. We're now exclusively dating, but that's ground zero. That's winter, right? Because the goalpost kind of always just keeps moving, right? Okay. Now, once we say we want to exclusively date, go around, and then this right here at the end would be, do we only want each other forever? At some point, someone asks this and then they graduate. So, you go around the bend. And even in marriage, it repeats. Because at some point, you're going to come home. You're going to come home to your partner, and it's going to be winter, right? And you say, okay, come home. You're both home. Then it's opening conversations, deep conversations, and then, intimacy or something. Some sort of next action or next action. Now, you can prepare these, but they still have to go in this order. Like, for example, you could probably flip-flop these where you can have opening conversations before you come home and then have a deep conversation once you get home and then intimacy. But like, it still at some point has to go in this order. And so you see how the question and asking leads to creative participation and you're not jumping ahead. So that's how you can use the 4UU framework with relationships.